Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting, August 14th, 2024. We're going to start with a roll call. So, Jamie?
Mr. Cooper, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mead,
Yes.
Ms. Ratburn,
Here.
Mr. Stressel,
Here.
Mr. Wolf,
Here.
Mr. Hagopian,
Here.
and Chair Elfman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Bob?
Everybody rise.
Let's start with approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the minutes? Fred?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the first item that we reviewed, and it is BOA 24020001. And that was the challenge of the applicant that the board had made a mistake, and at the end of the applicant's attorney's presentation, I asked him specifically, and it is in the tape, and I've given it to the secretary, that I wanted to know whether or not he wanted to cover the other 4 items to complete his objections as to whether or not the board had made a mistake, and his response was, I do not think I need further discussion. And I am suggesting that that be included in the minutes because previously, many years ago, we had a case that went before the circuit court, and all of the minutes of the meeting that they were challenging were not complete, and the court ruled in favor of the applicant. So this is one that I think we need to make sure we protect the board.
Thank you, Fred. Do we need a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Jamie?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Ratburn?
Yes.
Mr. Stressel?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Ms. Hagopian,
Yes.
and Chair Elfman.
Yes. Thank you. Before we continue, Mohammed, if I could just have you introduce who's up there with you, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. From my extreme left is Shakila, Mark, James, and Bert, and myself, Mohammed, and Mr. You want to introduce yourself?
Smile, Dwayne.
Hey, Dwayne Spence, Deputy City Attorney.
And we have Karen over there sitting at the front desk.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So each member of the public that wishes to speak after each item is presented and discussed by the board will have 3 minutes per item. Representatives of association and groups will have 5 minutes. If we can now do the swearing in.
Anyone intending to speak, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give at this public hearing will be truthful and accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. First case, case number 240-50002, and this is 5900 Hawkins Road. Do we have an applicant? Thank you. If you could please state your name, relation to the property.
I think
and
we
we'll
ought
go
to
from
have disclosures too before we get rolling down.
Thank you so much, Fred. Milton, any disclosures? None. Doug? None for myself. Bob?
None.
Fred?
Couple of trips to the site and a lengthy discussion with the applicant's attorney, Jana, and also with the head of the Public Works Department, Alan Dodd.
Thank you, Fred. Jason?
None.
Okay. Jason?
None.
Okay. Thank you. It's all yours.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jana Loda. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Holland & Knight here on behalf of Kiewit Water Facilities, Florida, the design builder of the Prospect Lake Clean Water Center. We also have with us a few members of our project team. including Freddie Arudo and Ryan Gustafson from Hewitt, as well as our landscape architects, Michael Phillips and Rachel Kinsey with Keith and Associates. So we are before you tonight requesting a single landscape variance to accommodate the development of the Prospect Lake Clean Water Center, which once fully operational will replace the water treatment functions of the Five Ash plant. The Prospect Lake Clean Water Center is a new state-of-the-art facility that will utilize technologies of ion exchange and nanofiltration, I wanted to get that right, and which has the sole objective of improving water supply reliability, water quality, as well as compliance with local and regional water standards. Once it's fully operational, it will be able to provide up to 50 million gallons a day of potable water to serve the residents of the city of Fort Lauderdale. To help orient you to the location of this proposed facility, and I know some of you indicated that you've driven by, it is located within the city well fields, which are located south of Cypress Creek Road, north of Prospect Road, west of Northwest 31st Avenue, and further west of the Executive Airport, and east of 441. By and large, what you see here is predominantly owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale, from Cypress Creek down to Prospect Road, with the exception of the lofts at Palm Air residential development that's located north of Gator Lake. Gator Lake is part of the city of Fort Lauderdale ownership, and some commercial uses along Northwest 31st. While I'm on this aerial, I just wanted to highlight some of the site constraints that we have for the siting of this facility. The facility itself takes up a large land area. It's approximately 9 acres within the area that you see here with the blue star. So the sites for this facility are very, very limited, pretty much to one in the city, needing to be in close proximity to the well fields and the Five Ash plant. The proposed facility is proposed where you see the blue star. The site constraints, which are relative and relevant to the variance request that's before you, is the fact that we do have Gator Lake to the north and to the northeast. Obviously, the well fields are located in and around this site. To the south, you see those large kind of rectangular sandy-looking things. Those are the sludge ponds that currently serve the Five Ash plant and are currently still operational. You have Hawkins Road that runs along the west side, which has been vacated by the city, and which has been privatized with a fence to serve the various facilities of the city that are within this area, as well as a FPL transmission line that runs on the west side of Hawkins Road from Prospect Road all the way north. We also have the fact that we have the Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport located to the east and the runways, so that also affects the location of this plant. So we've got this very small parcel within which to design this state-of-the-art reverse osmosis plant to serve the city of Fort Lauderdale. So here is the proposed, it's an illustrative rendering of the proposed plant. If you've driven by over the last year, you probably have seen, that they literally dug a huge hole in the ground. Sorry, there's a fly flying around here, where the plant's going to be. And what you see above ground is just a portion of the plant. In that big hole that they dug, there is a series of complex pipes that interconnect the various filtrations and treatment systems that you see here above ground. And because of the particular and unique nature of this use, it is not appropriate to place, one, to protect the pipes that are below ground, but also to protect the infrastructure that's above ground from windstorm events and whatnot. As you can realize, this is a critical infrastructure facility for the city of Fort Lauderdale, and as such, we are not proposing any landscaping within that main footprint of the plant. So here is the actual, you see with the dashed boundaries, this is actually the site plan for the plant. Our variance that we're here for you tonight is in large part to reduce the number of site trees associated with the plant because we are unable to plant trees within the actual physical plant itself. We are, however, meeting the code for the vehicular landscape areas associated with the parking lot, as well as Hawkins Road down to Prospect. A fairly robust landscaping on the east side of Hawkins Road. We are not proposing landscaping on the west due to the existing FPL transmission line. Although we are asking for a variance, which you'll see in a moment, which reduces the site trees from 93, I believe, to 47, we are still providing 42 additional VUA trees as well as 2 street trees. Since we initially filed this application, we have made a few modifications to the plans. One is to change the sod associated with the plant that will actually go around the edge of the plant down the street within the VUA areas from St. Augustine to Bahia. We've also updated the shrub material to be more native and thus drought tolerant. And we've also added, and hopefully I'm going to get to it, additional trees north of Gator Lake. As part of this overall development of the Prospect Lake Clean Water Center, there were trees removed as part of the physical site plan that you see here in gray, as well as trees elsewhere in the site. With the development of this site and the planting of the trees as proposed north of the lake, the overall site will meet every provision of the city's landscape code with respect to tree quantities, both for site trees on our site as well as mitigation. The variance is required largely because we can't accommodate those trees on the physical site plan that comprises the site for the Prospect Lake. And just to give you a better idea of where these trees are going to be located, this is a little bit closer up view of the area. Again, Gator Lake is owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale. You can see to the north the lofts at Palm Air. There is a stabilized path. It's a gravel path that is used by the city regularly to access the various wellheads. What you see here with the landscaping that is immediately adjacent to the lake, that will remain untouched. Even what you see that's immediately adjacent to the Prospect Lake Clean Water Center. Any landscaping there that's needed to be removed has been removed. So what we are proposing to do, in part for purposes of this variance request, is to take those 46 trees and actually plant them north of the lake where they are more appropriate to provide a buffer to the residents to the north. One thing I'd like to note, and as you know, we were before you previously requesting a deferral so that we could have a further community meeting with the community, which occurred, I believe, on July 26th, if I'm not mistaken. And there were 2 things that were particularly important to the community. One was that any trees that we plant, that they be flowering trees, and you may actually hear from one of the residents about this tonight. In the landscape plans that were included in your backup, I believe it is sheets LP 110 and 111. There is a note where we have committed that a portion of those trees to be planted north of the lake will be flowering trees. Another item that was very important to the residents is to ensure that any trees that are planted survive and that they are properly irrigated. So there's also another note that we've added to the plans that are included in the backup. And I believe that is note 3 on sheet LP002 that provides that we will be complying with any requirements of the code with respect to irrigation. So now I'd like to just give you another vantage point. This is another vantage point of the landscaping around the lake. You can see kind of the edge of the construction area there south of the lake. And it's within that kind of green path that you see between the landscaping along the lake and the trees along the stabilized path where these trees are going to be proposed along the entire length of Gator Lake. So I'll turn now to the criteria for the variance. This is the criteria that's in your code. Just turning back to the presentation that I made to you tonight, the first criteria is that there are special conditions and circumstances that affect the property at issue. And recall earlier in my presentation where I highlighted the various issues surrounding our site that really creates a very constrained site for purposes of our site plan. Gator Lake to the north, sludge ponds to the south, Hawkins Road to the west, transmission line to the west, and whatnot. Also, this is a very unique property in that there's really only one property where this particular facility could be sited. And that goes to then subsection B. This is a very unique use. It's a use where you typically wouldn't have landscaping where on other sites you may, because of the nature of the fact that it is a water treatment plant with a very expensive and complex system of pipes and equipment both above and below grade. All of those, we believe, creates a very unique situation where there's a very low likelihood that any approval by this board would be used as a precedent in any other case. The literal application of the provisions of the ULDR, again, the fact that we cannot physically plant because of the nature of the use, the fact that we have pipes and equipment and whatnot, would deprive us the effective use of this property. Clearly, the hardship is not self-created. It is a nature of the physical use of the property for treatment, water treatment plant with the interconnected pipes both above and below ground, the fact that there's really no other property that we can utilize effectively for this use in the city, that we believe that criteria is also met. And of course, we do believe this is the minimum variance that we can request. Indeed, we actually are providing the trees covered by the variance elsewhere on property outside of the site plan, but the fact that we can't physically provide them on the site is what's necessitating the variance. It's for all these reasons that we believe, coupled with the information that's in your backup and a more detailed explanation of how we feel we meet the criteria for a variance, that we believe it's appropriate for this board to grant the request. I stand ready to answer any questions. I try to be as quick as possible, as well as members of our team, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's save a little time for rebuttal. I know there's going to be some members of the public wishing to speak, and then we'll bring you back for the board as well.
Certainly.
Thank you. So if you're a member of the public, you wish to speak to this matter, please line up at the microphone, introduce yourself. So you can introduce yourself, your property address, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Michael Ray. I live in Palmyra Lofts, where this is happening, 6130 Northwest 33rd Terrace. I went to the community meeting last month. I don't know why they had it, really, because they ignored us. They had a list of trees that were horrid. And a year ago, the city cut 27 trees illegally, and I found out, and they replanted them. And these are the trees that they replanted. You can pass them around. These are city photos. We told them at this meeting, we don't want these trees. They're ugly. We want some flowering trees. And we were told that they wanted to be good neighbors and that we could work together. And with all the dust and the noise and the lights and the pollution and the animals and the disruption.
And if you could get closer to the microphone, too, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
We would hope that you would allow us to have some input. We now have 27 trees there that were replanted. This is also a city photo.
I'll need you to speak to
Sir,
the
if you
microphone.
would please,
And it shows you where all
sir, if you would please talk into the microphone.
where the 27 trees were planted. And they alternated, crepe myrtle, Royal Poinciana, and golden shower trees. We don't want oaks and mahoganies and slash pines and tababuyas that are messy. I mean, why do you insist on having these other trees? It's just not right. It's just one more instance where we're ignored and told you don't matter. So we hope that we can work with you to get some beautiful flowering trees that bloom at different times of the year and that look nice and smell good. And they're all on the city's approved list. And they were all from the city's nursery. I don't know if you're using the city's nursery. And the costs are not any more than these horrid trees that whoever has picked. And I understand you now at the last minute, I just heard today, are going to put in some flowering trees, but I don't know where or how many. So unless you work with the neighbors, I would say this variance should be denied at this point. And we have not had the opportunity to have our input. And we are affected the most by these trees, by this whole project. It's disrupted our lives. We have wild animals running our streets now that come from over there. So we hope that you could see that it would be nice if you vary this so that we can get some beautiful flowering and perfumed trees and not oaks and tababuya. You know how messy tababuyas are? I have no idea. Well, they are. They get wet in the street and they're slimy. Anyway, that's all I really have to say. I just think that if you go with your list, and I don't know, are you using the city's nursery and their list?
You're looking to us, and we're not the ones who do that.
Yeah, we're not,
Okay.
it's not our purview.
Well, these Kuwait or whatever people said that they'd be willing to work with this, and the day after that meeting, I sent a list of my trees, and I never heard anything since. and only got your list today. I mean, that's not really due process. And it's just not right. And why do you need these other trees instead of beautiful flowering trees? It just doesn't make sense. So I hope we can work together before you make a final decision, or at least with the caveat that we can have some input on these trees. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
I've got a question of Michael before he sits down.
Sure.
Can
And
you-
then, sorry, Fred, if you could go back to the microphone for when he speaks to you. It is being recorded.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Who did you send your correspondence to?
To this young lady, the attorney at Holland tonight.
So you gave your objections or your suggestions to the applicant instead of to the city, which makes the judgments.
I gave it to the person I was told to give it to, who was in charge of that.
Well, I would suggest that you retrench and make sure that you send your letter correspondence to the city staff. And Michael can raise his hand over there.
And why does that make a difference?
Because they're the decision makers. Yeah, he's going to be the one that reviews the plan.
Who's Michael?
I didn't, Mike. Go ahead.
Stand up, please.
It's not Michael, Mark.
It's
Mark?
Mark
What's Mark's last name?
Koenig.
Koenig. So is there a way you can not decide finally today, or with the caveat that we can have some input on these trees, since we're the ones that are going to live with them?
Well, let's listen to the rest of the public, and then we'll chat further.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just have a clarification. You pass out pictures and you have a map.
Yes.
Are those trees what the city's already planted or what you're asking for?
These are the 27 trees that had to be replaced because the city hired a subcontractor that cut down the wrong trees, and the city wasn't supervising their work. And I found out about it and reported it to Commissioner Herbst, and then we were given a list of 300 trees to study to pick the ones that we wanted. And as a result, we picked those three.
So those,
Chair?
The first three, the Royal Point Sienna, the Crepe Myrtle, and the Golden Shower. And those are photos that the city gave me, and they also gave me this.
so that's a map of what they took down? Or
This is a map of the 8 streets in our neighborhood, the dead end, and they put the names of each tree. They alternated the 3 kinds of trees times 9. So there's different colors.
that they put up, that you're talking about putting
They
up?
planted
They
them
planted.
a year ago.
So
Yeah.
they're there now?
They're there now.
So you have 27 trees that are brand new?
Yes.
That are,
Yes.
okay.
Well, no, those were different ones, the 5 that died, and they're replanting those.
Are those trees, Jana?
Chair?
Are those trees included in the list or number of trees that you all have agreed to plant, or are those in addition?
These are in addition, and if I may, Jana Loda once again for Holland tonight. These are, I believe, it's something that occurred before we were even involved here with the site, as far as mobilizing with the site. This fly keeps coming around. So that was a totally separate issue, but those trees have been planted and are separate and independent of what we're proposing. So what we're proposing to plant would be in addition to what they're showing you right now that the city had planted a year ago as part of the inquiry and complaint made by Mr. Ray. One thing I'd like to respond to since I'm up here is that we did receive, following our community meeting, a request from Ms. Suzanne Jacobs, and who I believe Mr. Ray was copied on that email with respect to the irrigation issue and the flowering plant issue. We did defer to the city on that, and a response was sent, which I believe was copied on Mr. Dodd as well, from Daniel Fisher, who's kind of the main project manager for the city on this project, basically with respect to the trees, indicating that because the numbers and types of trees may vary slightly during the actual permitting process and installation and the availability of species, they couldn't commit to exact trees at this point in time. But we certainly have the commitment that we added to a note in our plans following that community meeting to ensure that a portion of those trees are flowering trees that will be installed.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you're trying to cooperate.
Yes, sir.
And so I would suggest that we hear the rest of the public, and then we'll come back and maybe we'll hear from Mike Phillips, who's the landscape architect.
I would just have a question for Jenna.
Actually, you know what, we could, let's save it for her rebuttal time, because we are going to bring her back up for sure.
Chair, if I can interject with a procedural issue. So these are quasi-judicial hearings.
Yes.
All evidence presented at the quasi-judicial hearing has to be part of the record. I will ask the gentleman to submit that large photograph to be part of the record and any other materials that they've submitted.
And these.
I'd rather not. I want to keep this as well as this picture.
Unfortunately, you've already
All right.
provided it.
It's not going to get lost.
You can leave her in here.
Over here, sir. Sir,
Sorry, the baton gets passed.
thank you. And maybe I'll provide that notice for the public in general. Any materials that you ask the board to consider will have to be a part of the record. They are sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity. If their decisions are challenged in court, that record needs to be produced to the court, if you understand. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this matter? Okay. With that in mind, Janet, I'm going to let you come back up, and if there's anything else that you'd like to address as far as what was spoken, and if not, we'll hear from the board.
No, just happy to answer any other questions that you may have, but I just wanted to, again, reassure this board that we did take some proactive steps since the community meeting to address what were highlighted to us as the two main concerns for the residents, which were the inclusion of flowering trees were appropriate north of the lake, as well as the irrigation.
Thank you. Any board members have any questions for the applicant, Doug?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, so stand up there and be comfortable. Okay.
Okay. So these trees and this irrigation system, so once you put it in, who's paying for it and who's maintaining it? Does the city have to come maintain all these trees and pay for the water, or is that something being done by the plant management?
I believe, and I will defer if I'm wrong to my client, but the trees are being put in by Kiewit as the design builder as part of the project, and I believe they're required to maintain them for at least a year for purposes of survivability, and then I believe it's turned over to the city at that point after a year, after installation.
And the water for the irrigation also paid for by the city?
The initial installation of any irrigation that's required
Well, that's you.
is
but
us, yes.
The water, we have $1 million water bill. Is this going to be adding to that?
I don't know necessarily how. I don't know if that's been designed as far as the irrigation. There is obviously a lake out there. There's a lot of water out there. So I would hope that they would have an easy solution to the water supply for the irrigation.
Thank you, Bob.
I was just thinking maybe for the board's edification that you can step back and give them a brief overview of the importance of this project to the city of Fort Lauderdale and what the initial timeline is. I think if my memory serves me right, the commission's approved the initial processes, but it does go back to the commission at some point.
There's been a number of approvals that have been associated with this. Obviously, the initial award to the project company and then the hiring of Kiewit to actually do the design build. We are obviously on somewhat of a fast track to try to get this infrastructure up. You all know the historical issues with the 5-ash plant. I think that's probably well documented. As far as the approvals, we are in the process of completing the platting of the process. The plat has been approved by the city of Fort Lauderdale. All of the land effectively south of the lake is unplatted, and we do have two principal buildings that will comprise the water treatment plant that do require a plat to be recorded with that. I already mentioned in my presentation the vacation of Hawkins Road. Even though we are vacating Hawkins Road, it was never really built because a portion of it was needed to accommodate the site itself. It's still going to be used as a private road and for public utilities and whatnot going forward. The other item is the site plan has been approved. Obviously, we are working through the landscape drawings, this variance being one of the critical items that we were looking to obtain. They've been still a little bit in flush, as you can imagine, even during this process, adding the notes regarding the irrigation and the flowering trees, as well as changing some of the species in response to some comments that we got regarding the sod that we were using and whatnot. And also, again, folding in the trees that are associated with the variance to be planted north of the lake.
Mr. Chair, just a point of personal privilege or question. Is the variance in front of us today is simply to allow an exemption from the required distance separation allow them to reduce the number of minimum tree requirements. As far as, I know the public's interested here, the types of trees and those types of selection and stuff, that's really not our purview as far as I understand. Is that correct? For city staff or?
Well, I think the type of tree, it would not be our purview.
Right, just the approval of or denial of the variance.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go Pat and then Fred. Pat?
Yeah. One question may not have anything to do with anything else, but you're looking to reduce the trees from 96 to 46 or something like that. And I get that because they don't fit on this site because of the pipes and all of that stuff. So you're going to put them essentially off-site.
Correct.
Why can't you put all 96 off-site?
But to a certain degree, we were kind of already down the rabbit hole, and our timing to try to get this approved, to try to totally redesign the plans. We want to provide some landscaping on the site where we can. So, for example, the parking area. Let me see if I can go back to that real quickly. The parking area that you see, which is at the southwest corner and along Prospect Road. As the aerial showed, there's still a lot of vegetation around the lake. There's trees that are already there just south of the stabilized path, the ones the city already planted, and then, of course, we're planting even more in addition to that.
The other question was, and I may have misunderstood you, but the sludge pits or whatever they are that are on the 5 Ash site, are they going to still be there?
My understanding, and I will have the client kick me if I'm wrong, is that they're presently in operation because of the nature of how the system is at 5 Ash. Once 5 Ash is totally decommissioned and this site is up and running, I believe those are no longer used. What happens to them at that point, I don't know. I think that's a decision of the city.
It just occurs to me that if you're looking at a place to put the other 46 trees that you're looking for the variance for, that would be a really good place to put them once those sludge pits are no longer operational.
But that's several years out, I think, to when that happens. And right now, looking at it, knowing we have, I mean, it's pretty much commercial south of Prospect. Obviously, the airport's to the east, and then we have the well fields, the lake that you see there, kind of in the screen to the west. Knowing these residents are up there to the north, we thought that was the most appropriate place just to further enhance that buffer that's there.
My issue is that this is the City of Fort Lauderdale project, and the City of Fort Lauderdale asks residents to, put the number of trees that they're required to put, and there's very little way that you can get around not doing that because the city insists on it. And for the city not to insist, and again, I get why you can't put them here, for the city not to hold themselves to the same standard is a little bit troublesome to me. So I'm just looking at, isn't there a way to locate those, even if they're not there? It would seem to me that there are places elsewhere in the city of Fort Lauderdale on city property that trees would be a welcome addition. And has that been explored?
So you're talking like physically totally off the site, like in a Mills Pond Park, for example.
Exactly. Snyder Park, where they're tearing them down to build a pickleball court.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that Snyder? No.
It's Snyder. It's definitely Snyder.
But here, again, we're trying to keep them as close to the site as possible, and thinking that this was probably a goodwill gesture to the neighbors to the north to include them in that area.
Right. No, I get that, and I get the fact that it is very vegetated, and there's going to be a lot of trees, and you can't put more trees because they won't stay healthy. But we have done projects in my neighborhood where somebody wanted to build a cluster development or something, and part of what they agreed to do in order to remove trees was to relocate trees throughout the neighborhood. And that's sort of where I'm looking at it is I don't see any need to have a total reduction of the trees. I just see your need not to have them on this site.
Correct. I mean, given the physical design of the plant, and again, the particular code requirement, just to kind of go to the variance request, is it's not the VUA trees, it's not the street trees, it's not any of that. It is the requirement of the code that you provide 1 tree per 1,000 square feet of net lot area. And we have a large segment of our site within the physical site plan that it just simply can't accommodate trees. So we've tried to put them everywhere we can, but still wanting to plant those trees, not plant 46 trees. We're looking to basically effectively locate them off site.
Right, and I'm saying that if you we're going to owe those trees to the city of Fort Lauderdale is going to owe themselves 46 trees. Where they put them, I don't care. But I don't think that we should just reduce the number of trees. Grant, and I mean, I'm all for this, that they're not going to fit here, and I understand that. That's not. So I just think that they should go somewhere. It sets a good example.
Okay, hold on. Next, we're going to get Fred, and then Bob, you're next. And then Doug.
Yeah, Dwayne. I have a question. What's before us tonight is to vote on approving a variance for them not to provide a certain number of trees, roughly 50% of what's required for the net lot area. And yet, we hear the applicant agree that they will put those same number of trees elsewhere on the site. So exactly how do we vote on approving or voting against the variance in order to be able to get the trees that they have verbally agreed to plant someplace else?
So the variance is with regards to the requirement on a particular lot area. So when you say placing it on the same site,
Clearly, it's not part.
It's not part of the same site. So I think the confusion here is that you have a site that's a part of the site plan, and then you have adjacent properties that are owned by the city. And so the conversation that I've heard the board talk about is understanding that the applicant, the city, owns adjacent parcels, is whether or not they can fulfill this requirement on adjacent parcels. If this was a regular applicant, you would say absolutely not. They have to fulfill the requirement on the property, which is why they're seeking the variance. The other considerations, the criteria, what I generally counsel the board with regards to conditions, and it's very rare that conditions should be applied in the context of a board of adjustment with regards to variances, but conditions are applied when you're looking at the criteria, you think that they are failing to meet a criteria, but for the imposition of a condition that would allow them to meet that, to satisfy that criteria. Absent of determining that in terms of the hardship, that the placement of trees on adjacent property that the applicant owns helps them to mitigate the criteria or mitigate the hardship. That would be my guidance in terms of.
So this becomes a condition as part of the motion.
Correct.
So in voting to approve their variance,
condition on
adding the required number of trees elsewhere on the city property.
And the reason why you find that requirement helps them to meet the criteria.
Okay, so lastly, I wanted to hear from the landscape architect because somewhere along the way, in my discussion with Public Works today, I was told that the plans that we have before us have not been submitted to the planning department, to the DSD, for any kind of review and approval. And so I had questions on spacing of the trees as is proposed in the plan. Mahoganies were, and I understand that possibly the solution is evolving, but in looking at the plans that we were given, mahogany trees get to be 60 and 80 and 100 feet across, and they're planted 20 feet on center. And so I've had a conversation with Mark on exactly what his ability is to review the plans and make changes or request changes be made on the tree spacing, subject to this gentleman's consideration on species type. And and the fact that, and I didn't go look at this strip because it was beyond where I thought I needed to drive at the time 2 months ago. I have no idea on the spacing of the existing trees, their species, and or the trees that the city has added and how that enters into the mix of adding another 40 or 50 trees in that area, other than to turn it over to the department to review.
And just to clarify, I believe you're talking about the trees that are being planted along Hawkins from the plant down to Prospect Road.
No, actually, those trees, the sable palms are planted 8 feet apart, and that's really not appropriate. The code as it exists today doesn't require a specific spacing. If you'll wait till next Wednesday night, maybe it will be. But at any rate, truly the spacing is referred to as whatever requires the trees to be able to mature. And in truth, if you plant sable palms 8 feet apart, they're going to end up with dog legs in every one of them. So, but I told you when we talked on the phone that I didn't want to get into the design tonight because I don't think that's our responsibility. I just wanted to make sure that hopefully in the motion that's fashioned, that the responsibility of approving the plans lies with the city of Fort Lauderdale DSD department and not as it is addressed in the specifications, which says landscape architect. And I read that to mean that it's your landscape architect reviewing your plans.
Well, I will tell you, throughout this entire process in the site plan, I know we've had close contact with the city's landscape architect's plans review with respect to, what was being provided for the site. And I do believe that the final plans will, of course, be reviewed and approved by the city of Fort Lauderdale. Of course, Mr. Phillips is here to answer any questions as the landscape architect if you had any, but I just want to give you that assurance.
I think that we've covered everything we need to cover.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred. Doug?
So can we just approve the site plan with the lack of trees and let somewhere else in the city take care of if and where they want to put other trees and approve the site plan for not requiring the trees?
Well, actually, I think I had you first just in case, but I think Bob was going to make a motion with all that in there. Okay. So, Bob?
If you guys don't mind, I'm going to put a motion, to approve, let me get our proper, approve PLN-BOA 240-50002, to approve the variance request, the minimum tree requirement from 1 tree per 1,000 square foot of net lot area to 1 tree per 200 square feet net area, a total variance request of 46 trees with the condition to satisfy and mitigate our criteria. We request that the additional trees be planted by the city somewhere else, either off-site or to the best of your ability.
Okay, and before we continue on that, before you say anything else, Dwayne, I never closed the public hearing, and I want to do that now. So first, I should not. Go ahead, Dwayne.
No, sure. Go ahead and close the public hearing.
Public hearing is closed. Go ahead.
There is a correction that needs to be made with regards to the numbers on the motion.
Okay.
You said 200, but it should be 2,000.
Oh, 2,000. Okay.
Oh, clerk, all right. Okay.
I'm reading my note down.
Motion?
Well,
Because
there's a
I'm a
motion
little-
on the
I
table,
was a
so
little
let's
bit
have
confused.
discussion. Well, actually, let's see if we have a second, then we can have discussion on the clarification. So do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion and a second. Let's have discussion. Pat?
Turn on your microphone, please.
It was sort of rambling, Bob, so I want to make sure that the motion says what I think the motion says, and I don't know that it does, so you want to read it back, if you could, please?
Yeah, read it back, and then I'll make any changes you guys want me to do.
The condition is to satisfy and mitigate other criteria that the additional trees be planted somewhere else, either off-site or to the best of your ability, is what you said.
Yeah, I can't go with that, so,
You suggest something?
is this part of the discussion, Mr. Chairman? No, Mr. Chairman, is this part of the discussion?
This is part of the
Sort
discussion.
rephrasing that a little bit?
Sure, this is part of the
Okay.
discussion, go for it.
All right. And I think it's saying what you're saying, but you know, I like to control things, so.
Say it differently, Pat, go for it.
Okay. The motion would be to grant the variance to, no, okay. The variance would be to allow the location of the 93 trees required by code. 47 of them to be planted on an adjacent site, and whatever that other number is, 46 minus whatever.
The balance.
To be located elsewhere on city-owned property within 6 months of the CO of the plant.
Dwayne?
Is
All right,
that-
so the variance request is is basically a reduction of the
And I would,
requirement
I would
for,
vote to deny the variance request to reduce, but I would grant the portion of it asking for the trees that do need to be planted off-site.
that can't be
I don't think
done.
we can do that.
Okay, so let's go back to what we can do.
So the variance request is reducing the number of trees that are required to be planted on that particular site.
Okay.
The second part is the applicant suggesting that based on the number of trees that are reduced based on the variance, they are proffering to place them off-site on properties located near this site.
But
So it's granting, so if I were in your shoes, I would be granting the variance because it meets the criteria and conditioned upon the placement of a number of trees equal to or well, it's not completely equal to the numbers reduced, right?
It's 46 trees is the reduction.
On adjacent site to mitigate the impact of
Okay.
the variance.
So it would be granting the variance to reduce the number of trees required to one tree for every 2,000 square feet, with the condition that those trees be located on an adjacent site prior to CO, and that the balance of the required trees, the 46 trees, be located on other city property elsewhere within the city, again, within 6 months of CO.
I don't think you can do that.
That's the same.
No.
So,
No, it's not.
so I think that third part is beyond the proffer,
No,
but
well, because I believe what I heard, excuse me, Jana Loda, once again, is that the trees that we're proposing on-site be located off-site, and the trees that are the variance go someplace else.
Exactly.
And I don't think that we can do that because that's not what was noticed.
Well, then you can offer.
So basically, there's be no trees on the site. is what-
Well, you've said there aren't going to be any trees on the site.
Oh, no, we have.
Hold on.
You're changing-
One
you're
at a
changing-
time, Doug, hold on.
Yeah.
Everybody breathe. Okay, Doug, go ahead.
Okay. The variance is, they want to reduce what's on site. Okay? I think we should grant that variance.
Condition on.
Okay, see, the conditional is a funny thing, is, I don't know, personally, can they see the tree, can I ask a question? Can you see the plant from the townhouses, or is there already? Okay, so adding trees is gonna block your light from seeing and whatever else.
Here's an image of basically, you can see the townhomes off to the right, off to the
Right,
left.
but I'm not sure how
excuse me.
thick those trees are. Can you see
Right.
them? Can you see the light? So these trees are important for you to not visually see the plant.
Okay, now
Okay.
we're getting a little bit off base,
I
and we
was
do
just
have,
looking at
we do have a motion on the table. We did have a
All right.
friendly
Can
amendment
I
in
just
part of
ask another
discussion, so
question?
let's get back on track.
Because I just want to ask one more question. So what this note on this says is the applicant is requesting to place the trees covered by this variance on adjacent property owned by the applicant to the north of the development site. So what trees were you putting there?
It's the 46 trees. The specific code section that we're asking a variance for requires 93 trees.
Right, so you're
We're
reducing
able
that
we're able to provide
46.
47 on the site plan. It's the 46 we can't that we're looking to put north of the lake.
Okay.
Right, so can we not just grant what she's asking for? She's asking what you're expecting her to do. Correct. We don't need to
Okay,
rewrite that.
so right now we have a motion. We could deny the motion and we could start with a new motion.
Or the maker can withdraw and.
Even better. Thank you.
I withdraw my original motion, and I'm just going to, with the chair's approval, I'd move to grant the variance to reduce the minimum tree requirement of 1 tree per 1,000 square feet of net lot area to 1 tree per 2,000 square feet of net lot area, a total variance request of 46 trees, period.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay, that was,
Because that was my initial question to Dwayne, to the city attorney, and he responded that we need to add condition on the fact that the trees that we are granting the variance for be placed on other city properties, and I was hoping that it would be at the approval of the city landscape architect in the Department of Sustainability.
So Dwayne Spence, Deputy City Attorney, just wanted to make sure that's clear. I did not say that you have to put that condition on. You asked whether or not
I know
you
we
can.
didn't have to. I'm suggesting
okay.
that is
No, I just wanted to make sure the
absolutely
record is clear.
necessary to ensure that they place the remaining trees that we're approving the variance on elsewhere within the area of the site.
Exactly. I agree with Fred. That was my whole thing, is that we know you can't put them there, put what you can put there, but those trees, those different trees don't go away. They go somewhere.
So I think.
I thought that was how she wrote it in here.
That's what I did too.
Yes, so just for clarification, so the original variance request is as stated in the motion, but there is the proffer that is listed in the red print on the agenda with regards to, it's not.
That's adjacent. No, that's not right.
The note states that the applicant is requesting to place the trees covered by this variance in adjacent properties owned by the applicant north of the development site.
And that's
Oh,
the
no,
problem.
your motion stopped at the black print.
That's right. It did not include that last
We want
sentence.
the motion to include the black and the red.
Okay.
so maker of the motion, do you want to try again?
Add the notation preceding that, verbatim.
What is it?
After 46 trees, the note on the bottom there, in red,
Adding
all that into the motion.
so his motion, as stated, conditioned upon the applicant's proffer, and that would be the note in red. I'll read into the record that the applicant is requesting to place the trees covered by this variance on adjacent property owned by the applicant to the north of the development site.
I still don't think that doesn't.
Okay.
At the approval of the city landscape architect in the Department of Development.
Hey, Fred, you have to ask that of the motion maker. Bob, are you okay with that friendly motion?
I don't know what the procedure is with the city, but it doesn't bother me at all.
That's putting him in charge of making the decision.
I don't know if we have the authority to do that, but I don't.
Well, ultimately, he's the one that will sign the
I don't
permit.
have any problem with it if we have the authority to do that.
Dwayne, do we have the authority to do that? Or are we going to go around in a circle?
Either way, it will be reviewed, so.
Add that to our motion, if it's okay, Fred?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have that to motion. Do we still have our second, Milton? Yes. Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Jamie, are you okay, or you want to clarify?
No.
Okay.
Can we read the motion again?
To approve, and then the condition, it's actually red on the agenda, to reduce from 1 tree per 1,000 to 1 tree per 2,000. And the applicant is requesting to place the trees covered by the variance on adjacent property, owned by the applicant to the north of the development site.
What does the trees covered by the variance mean? What is?
It's the actual variance request, the reduction of 46 trees. So it's those 46 trees are slated to be placed on the adjacent property owned by the city.
Yeah, the word is adjacent, not north.
So if you would like to replace the trees covered with the 46 trees reduced as a result of the variance.
Okay,
I mean,
please.
But that, so we're talking about two different issues at the moment.
No, the motion is before us, is what's verbatim on our minutes for the variance.
Correct, and Member Rathburn is asking for
Are
clarification
we
on
doing
what.
90, are there 93 trees?
The variance request is to reduce the total number required on the site by 46 trees. Those 46 trees are what we're proposing to install on the adjacent property north of the development site.
So you're having 47 on the site.
47 plus additional trees.
You're doing 93 trees. All right, that was all I wanted to know.
Okay, so Jamie, will you read it one more time? And then let's hopefully get through a vote.
To approve to reduce from 1 per 1,000 to 1 per 2,000, and the applicant will place the trees covered by the variance on the adjacent property owned by the applicant to the north of the development site. And do we still want the approval of the city's landscape architect and development services?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. If you could take the vote, please.
Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn? Yes. Mr. Stressa?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Gopian?
Yes.
And Chair Alsman?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next case, case number 240-50007, 2122 Northeast 67th Street. If we have an applicant that could come up. Yes. Do we have an applicant? While the applicant's coming up, I'd like to ask for a disclosure, so let's start with Milton. Doug? I had a site visit.
None.
Bob?
None.
Fred?
Site visit?
Jason?
No.
And
None.
Pat?
None.
Okay. Hi, whichever one of you wants to speak, please state your name and relation to the property.
My name's Chris Carney. I live at 2122 Northeast 67th Street, Fort Lauderdale. This is my wife, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
And we're doing a variance to replace a fence that's it's worn, old fence. We want to replace it with a new vinyl fence. And we're requesting we had a pool built in the early 90s, and the fence was right along the pool. It wasn't the 3 feet that is now in the codes and whatever. So that's the variance that we're requesting.
Well, the pool is adjacent to the sidewalk.
Right, and I'm going to ask you just to restate your name because this is being recorded.
Barbara Carney.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And what were you saying again? I'm sorry, in the microphone?
The pool is adjacent right to the sidewalk, so we only have a small area, and that's where the fence was in between, so we don't have the required 3 feet from the sidewalk to the pool.
Excellent. Anything else you wish to add? There may be some questions.
No?
Okay.
Sir?
Stay right there. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak to this matter? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board for some questions. I know I'll have some as well. But does anybody have any questions offhand? Jason?
Just to clarify, you're putting the new fence in the same location that the old fence is in?
Yes.
Okay.
Bob? Oh, microphone's on.
Are you ready for a motion?
Being the fact that I did a site visit, I think my concerns were covered. So I would say I'm ready for a motion. Does anybody else have anything to add first? Okay, let's have our motion.
Whoa. Did we hear from the public?
Yes, we
closed
did.
the public
I missed
hearing.
that while I was.
And you know
looking.
what? But thank you for reminding me. I keep on forgetting. The public
Yeah.
hearing is closed. Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Before you guys go to a motion, I have several comments,
Okay.
which should be a surprise. First of all, Our responsibility at this board is the variance, the minimum variance that will make it possible for the reasonable use of the property. That is number 4, small e. The state of Florida requires all pools to be fenced by a 4-foot high, actually 4 foot high, 48-inch fence. And I would suggest that based on what we see on the site, which is charming actually, and when you drive the neighborhood, there is almost no area, no property that is faced with this same situation. There are several properties that have hedges that grow to 4 to 5 feet high. And it's my contention that if the board follows what we are required to do, which is to approve a minimum, that they should be installing a 4-foot chain link fence at the back edge of the sidewalk, which is currently approved and written into the code, and that they need to install hedge material behind that in order to soften the impact of the fence on the public. I do not believe that that area deserves to have a 6-foot high white fence facing the street without any landscaping in front of it. And there are plenty of plants that can be utilized in the landscape area that they have to do exactly what they want to do with installing a 4-foot chain link fence. How's that?
What are we asking?
They're asking for a 6-foot fence. It's plastic. It's right on the back edge of the sidewalk. And that's not indicative of anything in the neighborhood within a 3 or 4 foot block.
I don't know if, I'd ask the attorney, I just think we're here to grant a variance or see if it violates stuff. I don't know if we can determine design standards and things like that.
No, you can turn it down.
Well, you turn it down, absolutely. But
So if I may, so the criteria is in the code. If the applicant, they have the burden of showing by preponderance of the evidence that they meet the criteria that's set out in the code. If they do meet it, you're required to grant the variance. If they fail to meet it, then you deny the variance. So I would just advise the board to review the criteria A through E in their consideration of the application.
And I would never support putting a chain link fence right on the property line, with or without landscaping, personally.
Yeah, so being the fact that I was at the property, just to make a comment, there is a 6-foot fence there right now, or what I believe to be 6 foot. I did get out, it's over my head. I'm just going to assume it's 6 foot. And, they have the uniqueness as far as how they're on a corner lot of being able to cover that spot for privacy. And I don't find a PVC fence on there. And I can see the fence is coming down. The fence has damage is coming down. You have it posted. You have poles there. But
To approve the variance for application BOA 240500007 because it meets the criteria for hardship.
okay. Any further discussion? Fred?
Yeah, I don't think it is a minimum that we could grant. 4E says a variance is a minimum variance that is to make possible the reasonable use of the property. And the state of Florida and the city code requires a 4-foot fence fencing the pool, and you can accomplish the visual barrier that they're looking for.
Thank you, Fred. Pat?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, Doug? Anything you want to add? If so, microphone.
But the variance is for the location of the fence, not for the fence. They're not asking for an extra high fence. They're just asking to put the fence closer to the property line.
Okay. In that case, we did have a motion, Jason. And did we ever get a second?
yeah.
We did.
Okay. Motion to discussion. No further discussion. Jamie?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Mr. Stressel?
No.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes, motion passes.
Pass 6-1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next case, case number 240-60002, 225.
Drive-by.
Okay.
Nothing.
And Pat? None. And Jason, I drive by. Okay, sir, please state your name in relation to the property. And microphone, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is David Santiago. I'm agent for the property owner and also representing the business owner on the property. We're here requesting a special exception from the 300-foot requirement between liquor establishments. The property in question is short by 24 feet. Kind of give you a little history. About several months ago, we opened up a new Senor Frogs location there, and it's been well accepted by your tourists and your community. Operate and fulfill the state requirements. That is the request, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I do have one question. You said agent for the applicant. Agent in what capacity?
Agent for the owner, and I'm also an agent for the business operator.
Okay, an agent, when you say agent?
Agent as defined on your application request, because they require the owner to sign off to me to be an agent and to speak on their behalf.
Excellent.
Senior Frogs?
Yes, sir. It's doing well, so we thank you for your community.
OA 240-60002, move to approve the variance.
Okay. Looks like one person, two cases. Let's read it in. Case number 240-70001, 2925 East Commercial Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. Let's start with disclosures. Milton? Doug? I did a site visit. Bob?
Discussion with council.
Oh, and I apologize. I did have a discussion with council as well. Thank you. And Fred?
Multiple visits, actually.
Okay. And Jason?
None.
And Pat?
Nothing.
Okay. Andrew, you're up.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Andrew Shine here representing the property owner. We also have Bill Ader, the property owner, his wife Beth, and our architect Leo Hansen in the audience. Waiting on the presentation. All right, an institution in the city, essentially. It's been in the Ader family. This property has been owned since 1968. This building was built in the early 1970s and has been used as a bar or restaurant really since then. Being used as a bar or restaurant for 50, 60 years, back when you were allowed to smoke in bars and restaurants, the property is not in great shape right now. The property is not great as being nice. It's a tear down. They can't get insurance on it, and this building is coming down one way or another. There's currently no tenant in there. They can't get a tenant in there. Nobody wants to move in. So this property is coming down. And the question was, what could be built in its stead? What we're proposing to do is a small mixed-use project. And it consists of about 1,800, this is the views of it, about 1,800 square feet of office or retail on the bottom and 2 residential units on top. So the left picture is looking from the south. You can see the office retail on the bottom. Second picture is from the north, and third is from the south as well. In figuring out what to do here, a small mixed-use project made sense. We can go up to about 150 feet for an office building or retail or other commercial use. But we decided that what fits best in this area is a small mixed-use project. The property itself is zoned CB, which is a community business zoning. It's meant for businesses that are more in line with the community. So no real heavy commercial uses there. It's a community-centered business zoning district. And just to the north is RMM 25, which is a multifamily zoning district. So sitting right in between these, we felt the best use of this property, probably not the most valuable use of the property, but the best use would be a small mixed-use project. This is the site plan for the project. All parking will be provided for the residential uses on site. All parking for the commercial uses will be provided in the city's parking lot, similar to most other properties on this strip. This is the first floor plan of the residential units. They're 2-story residential units, each taking up about half the width of the building. And they're not large units. They're about larger than my house, but they're about 1,750 square feet, 2 bed, 2 baths. And these are the elevations of the buildings. The reason we're here tonight is because of the city's mixed-use provisions. The city's mixed-use provisions require three things. One is a minimum 10,000 square foot lot size. The other is a 100-foot lot width. And the third is a 1,400 square foot public plaza. And those can't be reasonably provided on this site. The site functions as a shopping center, as a cohesive shopping center. It was frankly constructed as a cohesive shopping center with everybody sharing same parking that's owned by the city. But the units are individually owned. This is the old, this property was platted about 70 years ago, and my client's property is in red, the parking lot's in yellow, and the note at the bottom is in yellow below that it's dedicated for the perpetual use of the public for parking only. So again, this functions like a cohesive shopping center, but it's not, just purely based on ownership. As to the shopping center, they unfortunately get all of the negatives of a shopping center and not really any of the positives. All the negatives meaning they don't have their own dedicated parking for their own uses. They don't get to control access in and out of the shopping center since it's a city public lot. It's difficult to construct, frankly, because you're at zero setbacks with your neighbors in this district, and it's always harder to do infill development. But they don't get any of the benefits of a shopping center, which is counting the entire shopping center as one development site. So from the outside, you can drive by and it looks like a single development site, but when you actually get into the nitty-gritty details, it's multiple development sites that all look like one. And that goes to things like the lot size. The shopping center itself is, far surpasses 10,000 square feet area, but this particular lot, just because of how it's owned, is not 10,000 square feet. The shopping center itself is 533 feet long, but the lot width here is only 35 feet because we don't get that benefit of being considered part of a whole shopping center, even though we get all of the negatives. Also, it would be quite easy to put a 1,400 square foot plaza on a site, a complete development site this size, but with the city's parking lot there, we cannot touch that. We can't do anything to the city's parking lot. It's just not possible to put a 1,400 square foot plaza on here. And the limited access also affects the ability to put a plaza there. Again, in the front, city parking lot, no access. In the back, that's an alley. This is the view from the alley. It's not really a street. It doesn't look great. And we don't have any place to put a public plaza back there either. We're, again, sandwiched between 0 foot on the east, 0 foot on the west setback. We can't touch our neighbor's parking lot. So there's frankly just no room to put it there. As to the next steps, this is important. We are early on in the process right now. If this variance gets approved, if these variances get approved tonight, we're still very early on in the process. As a mixed-use development, this has to go to the Planning and Zoning Board. First, we have to hold a neighborhood participation meeting before the Planning and Zoning Board. Then we have to go to the Planning and Zoning Board. And if approved by Planning and Zoning Board, the City Commission has the ability to review the project. So from a variance perspective, we do believe we meet the criteria. It's a really hard site to develop. It is a reasonable use. We can't find tenants for any other reasonable use. And it's the minimum necessary for this site. But even if the variances are granted, the Planning and Zoning Board will be reviewing things like neighborhood compatibility, the actual design of the project, landscaping, things like that. So even if granted today, again, very early, we're step one. The local planning agency will still need to be reviewing this. And they do have a lot of subjective criteria like neighborhood compatibility that they can get public input for and decide on their own. So that's our request tonight. Fairly simple, and we're, again, early on in the process. We're still going through DRC now and addressing comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll save some time for rebuttal if there is any. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this?
Chair?
Yes.
Could I just make a clarification?
Of course.
So this, as Mr. Shine stated, this is Bert with the City of Fort Lauderdale Zoning Department. This is in the planning review process, and I just want to note that the plans that are shown in this aren't necessarily going to be the plans that are final approved by the planning department. So I don't want the board to think that this is the final approved plans because it's going to change. And one of the comments that I discussed with the project case planner today was the fact that the plans do not show the required 5-foot setback for a CB area. It shows that the building is going to be right on it, but it is one of the comments that the project planner made in his review comments. So I just want to explain that, you know, as this plan sits, your decision is going to be approving this plan the way it sits. It's just going to be approved.
And not the final plans. It'll be substantially similar, of course, but small tweaks here and there. Just that's how timing has to work for this application.
Yeah, and that's a requirement by us that he gets his variance prior to us doing the final review at the staff review and then passing it on to the Planning and Zoning Board. And I just want to reiterate that the variance today doesn't have anything to do with the 5-foot setback or any other requirement not listed in this variance request.
Do we have to take all the variance requests?
The 5-foot setback you're talking about is on the front, so you don't open the front door to knock somebody off the sidewalk that's only 4 feet wide, right?
Well, Florida Building Code requires the doors to be in swing anyway.
I know. I mean,
Or actually, they have to be out swing, but
Okay.
it's the code that requires the setback, and I don't think it's based on the swing of the door or anything, but it's just part of the code.
It's up to 9 feet high in CB zoning district. Usually the first 9 feet, it has to be 5 foot inside and the rest can on the top it can come outside. So,
Jason?
Are there any other lots on this block that are have residential? I see a few buildings that are taller than 1 story. Are there any other on this block that are you would consider mixed use right now?
Not that I'm aware of. Directly behind this block.
Right.
though.
Right, not on this block.
Correct.
For point of information, I used to live right across the street to the north, and I've been in that establishment many times on St. Patty's Day, and I'm surprised my cigarette didn't put up the building in flames. But
Too bad it didn't, I guess, right? I mean, I'm kind of, I think I'm all about, bringing mixed use where it's appropriate. So I think this is a really creative idea. I guess there's about 10 or 15 properties on this block. So, I'm very cognizant of the adjacent neighborhood and what's there. So, I think you've done a really creative job of kind of making a use of this property, which really I think if you followed the code would just obviously end up being another one story or so retail building.
Mohammed?
yeah, Mr. Jason, if they do not comply with that 5-foot setback, they have to come back to the board.
Understood.
Just in case,
Yeah.
just for FI. That's why we are making a clarification here, even though it's not here. Whatever the code requirements are, they have to meet it. If nothing is, they're not in compliance, they have to come back.
Okay, thank you.
And if it's not, then they can go with it. Just the renderings.
Is there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, if there's no other questions, entertain a motion.
Okay, I guess we'll take each variance one at a time. Is that how we
Please.
should do it?
Yes.
Or I could do them all at once?
I made that mistake a couple.
I know, I thought they told us to do them individually. Okay, we're going to try it all at once and see if anybody complains. Okay, I move to approve all 3 variances for application BOA 240700001 as the client has met the hardship requirements, and that's variance pertaining to section 47-18.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Before discussion, I just want to see, does anybody have an objection to the fact that we took them all together? Okay, seeing no objections there. For discussion, Doug?
Well, I don't feel that this is a hardship because you're changing use. Just because you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole doesn't make it a hardship. There's a lot of things you can do with this property, so I don't feel that it meets the criteria.
Thank you. I'll give an opinion as well. As far as what's proposed being built has nothing to do with us in this side. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't think that is a factor of, as an owner, you should be able to do what you want to do as long as it's approved.
Right, as long as it meets the code.
Yeah. So just giving an opinion. But we do have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Jamie?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
No.
Ms. Rathburn? Yes. Mr. Stressoff?
No.
Chair Elfman?
Yes.
Pass 5-2.
Thank you.
I did that.
Chair, if I may, before the next one, I have a unique request for this one, and I might need Attorney Spence's help on this.
Okay, let's go with your unique request.
We would like to request, in general, variances under the code are only good for 180 days unless you pull a building permit until then, by that time. We still have to go through planning and zoning and possibly city commission on this, and it's almost certainly going to take greater than 180 days. The code does allow this board to do another 180 days upon a motion. So we would request, just given how long this is going to take us to go through the process from here, if we could do another 180 days for a total of 360 days.
Do they have to pay an additional fee, or they just come back?
So they need a motion on 24070001 to give them an additional 180 days to do what? I'm sorry.
To pull a building
Pull
permit
a
for
building
this,
permit.
yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, one question, is that on the case we just completed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, Jimmy?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
No.
Ms. Rathburn? Mr. Stressoff?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Chair Elfman?
Yes.
6-1.
Okay, thank you. So the next case, case number 2407002, 2617. How do you say that, Andrew?
Burton Zetti.
No, I know that, the street name.
Oh, Acacia.
Acacia Court. And Andrew speaking for the applicant. I'm going to do disclosures first. Milton? Okay, Doug? Okay, I have three. I know the applicant. I did a site visit, and I had a conversation with council. Bob?
Conversation with council.
Fred?
Site visit?
Jason?
Drive-by?
Okay.
Nothing.
I do like the drive-bys.
As long as you didn't throw anything out the window, you're good. Okay, in that case, it's all yours.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Andrew Shine here representing the property owner. With me in the audience, we have Matt Burton Zetti, the property owner, and Marla Woodhouse, the architect. The property is located on Acacia Court in Idlewild. It is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Fort Lauderdale, and the lots are unique, to say the least. Just looking at this aerial, you can see a bunch of different shapes, sizes, and layouts here. Mr. Burton Zetti's is a fairly normal-looking lot, but the way the lot was designed and built was not. I drove around Fort Lauderdale, and I couldn't find any other similarly situated property like this. But they share a driveway apron with their neighbor here. This is Burton Zetti's house is on the left, and the neighbor's house is on the right. They share a driveway apron with the neighbor, and there are two large palm trees to the west of the other palm trees out of this picture. If this house were built today, the garage would likely be lining up with the existing driveway apron. The driveway apron has drainage implications. It's there, and it's the spot for a garage because you can't move your neighbor's driveway apron. So that's where the driveway is located right now. I did. I'll just go through what we're proposing. He's proposing to do a garage at a 2-foot 9-inch setback where the code requires 5 feet. This north is on the left side, so the garage would be on the east side of the house. I'm proposing it at a 2-foot 9-inch setback. This is the elevation of the garage. It would be a 2-car lift. And the reason for asking for this variance is a mix of increasing severe weather events and, interestingly, crime. I didn't think there was crime in Idlewild. It's not the first thought I had when I think of Idlewild. But then I was talking to Mr. Bertonzetti, and he had a Tesla stolen. I have an email to Tesla if you want me to hand it out. This is from 2017. And at one point, his car was put on cinder blocks and the tires stolen. So, and then in the flood last year in April, the water went all the way up to the garage. If you see, it's a very low-lying area compared to the street. And Mr. Bertonzetti he has children that are 17 years old, about to go off to college, and he's going to be traveling a lot more than he was before. And having a garage is pretty important when it comes to that. If you're gone out of away for a month, you want your valuables stored properly. And a lot of, in fact, most other properties in Idlewild do have garages. So when you don't have a garage, your car kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Idlewild is also very unique. I'm going to skip 2. This is Idlewild, an aerial. You can see all of the odd lot layouts, lot shapes. If you look at the south, the southeast triangle area there, I'm not sure how those lots were laid out. This is all just to show that Idlewild is, don't take offense, but Idlewild is just kind of a weird neighborhood in how it's done. It was originally built starting in the 20s. So seeing things like this and seeing a garage at a 2-foot 9-inch setback, or seeing buildings that are really close to their in here, so they're fully in support of him getting a garage. And that's really the request. It's pretty simple. He just wants to protect his belongings here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak? Seeing that there's none, we're going to bring it back to the board. And any questions for Mr. Shine? I will make a comment while waiting for questions. I did do a site visit, and I did notice the neighbor to the east. I noticed that there was quite a bit, it doesn't look it in that picture, but I know it was pretty deep between the house and I guess where the hedges come up. Do you know about what that is?
On the neighbor's property?
On the neighbor's property itself.
I'm not sure what's back there. Oh, you're looking for the distance?
Yeah.
We'll go with approximately 15 feet.
Okay. I know it was
Property line to his house.
from the property line to the neighbor's house. Yeah, because when I drove by, I did see that it was pretty deep versus right up to the property line. But, okay. Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment, I was gathering.
Yeah.
I used to live in Pasadena in California. They have a lot of those in the neighborhood, so.
You have a little house in the back of your house? Yeah. Right, that was the garage.
Yes, I assume. It sounds appropriate.
You went by the driveway around the house to the garage in the back that someone's converted into a structure.
Living space, yeah.
And to add, that structure in the back is legally non-conforming as well, could not be built today. Just, it's an old neighborhood with.
Jason?
I was going to make a motion.
Well, I just got a question.
Okay, let's have one more question.
If you build your garage to 2.5 feet from the property line, how do you get around your house? How do you get equipment behind there? How do you get a fireman behind there? How do you get around the house?
2 foot 9 inches is, unless you're carrying a dishwasher, a person can definitely get behind there. Otherwise, you go on the other side of the house.
Taking the bushes out?
No, there's going to be, you could squeeze behind there, but it's kind of irrelevant because you could just go on the other side of the house, the west side of the house.
Okay, good question.
07002, as the applicant has met the hardship requirements.
Okay, any further discussion? Jamie?
Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Mead? Okay. Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Mr. Stressoff?
No.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
No.
Chair Olson?
Okay, is there any communication to the City Commission? Anything good for the city? Do we have to discuss anything, and is it appropriate to discuss here about our next meeting? or the meeting thereafter when we were trying to figure out times and movements.
The October meeting.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so we're going to have to move the October 9th meeting. I sent you guys some dates based on your availability. The address, yeah.
So I guess the expectation is we're going to be there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
If we get invited this year.
What
Can I
pill did you swallow?
Can we move the November meeting a week earlier too then? We're moving all the meetings?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Move the November meeting a week earlier?
That's something you guys have to vote on. I mean,
To move any meeting for us from our end, it is, believe me, there are so many parts to each meeting. We have deadlines and everything gets pushed out, and because this is the commission, we can't do anything by commission can just, move us. So that's why we don't have any other option, but it's like, it is so much work behind the scenes for us just to get the dates, and not just that, the electronics and the whole the room, the advertisements, everything we have to look at and come up with dates to give you. So to just one meeting, Shakila has been working nonstop just to, just make sure, where and how it could be fit down. Thank you.
Doug, what was your thought process behind November? Okay.
Just a note, just for our alternate, I'm not going to be able to make next month's meeting. I have surgery. I'll be out for medical.
So Jason will be seeing you again.
Yes.
I'll check my sketch.
Was there?
You get to do many more site visits now.
Was there any movement afoot by the commission to appoint another 2 alternates that you were aware of? Because if he's going to be gone,
It was brought to the commission's attention.
And they
I
didn't
haven't
do
checked,
anything.
I haven't checked. No, they said they were going to do something. I haven't checked the agenda printed tonight, but I did not check the board appointments. to
okay, so
see.
you're satisfied that they actually are aware and are trying to do something?
They're absolutely aware, yes.
Okay, because it's really embarrassing to show up here and not have a full board.
Okay, thank you, Fred. If there's nothing else, I
Move to
move, we
adjourn.
move, we're adjourned.
Can we go ahead and select the date for October now, since we're all here?
We have one missing, but is this appropriate?
it hasn't been.
Well, yeah, but let's,
We can pick a date and then approve it.
Pick a date.
what did everybody respond to you as to what they preferred?
No, it has to be agenda. You have to have agenda time. You have to advertise it on the agenda.
Correct. So not everyone has provided a response.
Okay, so everybody needs to tell her what their choice is, because when we walked in here, one of the favorites was October 20th, and I can guarantee you I'm not going to be here. So she needs a response from everybody on the board as to what they can and can't do. And one of the comments that I made is that depending on the number of applications, if there is 1 or 2, maybe they should be continued to the following month, because to set up all this electronic equipment and run everybody out's a pain in the butt.
So board, just for clarification purposes, at this time, you have October 8th and October 22nd to choose from. Okay? Just something to think about.
If you decide today, whatever you want to decide, we can put it on the agenda.
But I'm fine.
All right, it matters. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and if you did not respond to Shakila, you could always walk over there to her afterwards because she's there. Okay.
Going to lock the front door.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Not getting out.